Welcome to Homemakers Radio. I designed this program so that you can work as you listen and have something to hear the way we used to in the olden days when we listened to the radio while we washed our dishes. And today I'm sitting in what's called my sewing room. It is also a bedroom, almost as tiny as the last room I was in, and I am going to try to show you a panoramic view of it, although it's going to be difficult. I have a day bed behind me, and I know there's a backlight behind me. There's a beautiful view out there of that window. And there's some shelves over here with things in them. And as I move around here, there's another little bed here. It's a little toddler bed, and it's sitting just below the other bed so that when the grandchildren come, they can be together here. And over here, a little bit further, is what you're going to see, some more shelves with some of my quilts and fabrics in them. And more. I hope I'm doing this right because I can't really see what I'm doing. And my patterns are over there. And I'm back. And today I am wearing what is called the Kinsale cloak from Folkwear Patterns. I made it several years ago out of very inexpensive fleece that's very thin because I knew that this cloak would be incredibly heavy because of the way that it was made. I did line the hood, and the hood has a drawstring on it that you can loosen to, and it looks like a collar. And you have seen this Kinsale cloak in some of the 1990s Jane Austen movies. The one Persuasion, when the girls were on the beach climbing up on I believe it was a little brick stairwell that they were climbing up outside on the beach, and they were wearing these red cloaks. They were similar to this, but also a lot of the other Jane Austen movies had the Kinsale cloak, and it's from the Folkwear pattern, which I'll try to include on my post. Now, if you're listening to this on YouTube, I would ask you, please click the link in the description box and go over and look at it on my site, because that's what I'm making them for. There aren't any comments here, and you can go over there and you can comment and you can read and look at what the other things that I have posted along with the video, because I'll be showing this on the dress form. I don't have a fashion photographer anymore. Everybody's too busy, and I'm not a very good model, so I just have to put it on the dress form to show you the best I can what it's supposed to look like. And today I have a teacup to show you. It sort of goes with this because it has a bit of the purple inside that goes with this. And this is an antique, but I believe that it's not as old as some of the others, and it may have been a gift type teacup from the 1960s, and it's not real old or brittle, and I still use this one. And today I have a lot to talk to you about. Now remember, this is for listening, not watching. I've shown you everything you're going to see. So unless you're not feeling well and you just want to visit, I would suggest you go take your little device and go start doing something. And I'll start out by saying that I always have three things. Here I talk about your preparation, which would include your appearance, and just getting ready mentally, emotionally, and physically for the work at home. And for those of you who aren't used to being home, who are used to getting up and, quote, going somewhere else, this is quite the challenge, isn't it, to turn your home into somewhere else. I just love the idea of it. Had I not learned to play when I was younger, I would never have thought of just turning it into somewhere else and making each room have a theme and each room have a name or each room have a function. And it isn't plain for me anymore. Most of the things I have here are things that I've had for a very long time. And in the interest of storage, I try to keep everything out and in my rooms rather than stored in a box somewhere because of the space, and also because it's probably better for the item to have it out. And if I'm not able to keep my things out, I probably would try to assign it to someone else, give it away. And in the manse, welcome to the manse, by the way, they're preachers' homes, which other people have lived in before, and we just do the best we can when we're preachers' wives and we live in the manse. Years ago, the churches decided to give the preachers just a little extra money so they could buy their own homes, which is the best idea ever. And I still hold out hope for doing that. In the meantime, I have to live in the manse. You don't get out what you put into it. I have done a lot of painting and repairs. You never get that back. But for the time being, I've decided to make it my home. And what I did when we first moved here is I thought, I'm very disappointed. I've always had my ideal in my mind of something that I'd like to live in. I decided just to make it that ideal. And I am working on it slowly. I have shown you some of the rooms and the things that I have done with them and the many variety of ways that I can use it. And so I think that one of the first things that you have to do to get in the mood to home keep, to take care, it's more than housekeeping. Anybody could hire a housekeeper, but when you're a homemaker, you care about those things. You care about where they're placed. You care about things that you have because they have a history, or that they tell a story, or that they have a meaning to you, or just because you like them. And if you were somebody's housekeeper, you wouldn't really have that feeling, that emotion that went with it. But I think the most important thing is to get ready to approach your home. You'll have a better feeling for it. You look at your things, you look at life a little bit different. You look at the house a little differently when you're prepared. So prep would be the first thing I would write down on my list. And that would mean get your shower, get dressed in fresh, clean clothes, get your hair and your skin prepared and fixed up for the day. I'm having a bad hair day. I washed my hair and it always flies away afterwards, so I couldn't do anything with it. And today I am going to talk to you also about why you should make your appearance your priority. First of all, you're a human being, not anything lower than that. And human beings have the unique quality of wearing clothes and dressing up and taking care of their hair. And we are above the ordinary in that respect, and also because we have a soul and we have a connection with God. And that is one reason you should glorify God by getting dressed and looking your best. And I remember when my children were younger how they liked me to look through my closet, and they'd say, oh, you could wear this, you could wear this. And they wanted to help me pick out my clothes, then some shoes, and it just was interesting to them, and they enjoyed their own clothes too. I think a lot of times we've gotten so casual today that people's clothes don't matter. They just throw on something. But I'm from the olden days when it did matter. We did care. Your clothes were important to you. And I took you through a journey from the beginning of the Bible to the end of the Bible a couple years ago when I first began doing the videos. And I took you through a journey, and I showed you the first reference to clothing, and I went on through the Bible and just kind of made a narrative out of it, of when clothing was mentioned and why it was important. And there was one time, I believe there were 30 changes of clothing offered to someone, and for some heroic deed. And clothing was very, very special because it was all handmade. In fact, the woman who made the clothes might have also spun the thread that sewed it together, or wove it together, weaved it together. So clothing was considered quite valuable, and a cloak was passed on from father to son. And a cloak was used for many different things. It was used as as bedding, as a blanket. It was used as seating. You could roll it up and sit on it, and there were so many things that clothing was for. So today, I do hope you will just take a break and go and get ready and come back, what they call it, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. I try to put in some of the figures of speech and sayings in it because we're losing our figures of speech, and I have had several videos where I have spoken about figures of speech. So I hope you will go get dressed and come back in a better mood. I did have a hard time getting started today. I just really did. And so I decided to go in the bathroom and just do something different and with my hair, and I decided that to just let it out, and I, splashed some water on my face and just had a cup of tea and just kind of started over. I used to do that with my children too. If they were having a bit off and they're having kind of a hard time and they just weren't happy, I said, let's go in the bathroom, let's get a bath, some new clean clothes, and let's just start over, and then have a special meal for them. And this was the attitude that was passed down to me from my parents, is that there's always a point at which you can start over. You're never ruined. Your day is never ruined. You just start over. Even if it's noon and you're not dressed, you can just start over. Just, don't look at the clock. Just say this is the beginning of the day. And so we want to move on to home. I wanted to say one thing. I've got a little note here about skincare. In my life, I haven't paid a lot of attention to some of the skincare products. I was happy with my glycerin soap and always washed my face with that. And as I got older, I thought, well, that's good enough. But the other day, I tried a product that was called an exfoliation. I don't have it here with me, but it was by L'Oreal, and it was something you put on your face like a mask, and it had, after it dried, you could wash it off and it would foam, and it had little scrub beads in it. I'm trying to think what they were exactly. Were they apricot? Something like that. And I am telling you, I am sold now on exfoliation. I thought that because my skin was old, that I didn't really need to do that because, it's getting a little thinner. It seemed a little more delicate. And so, but I tried that, and I have gotten rid of some of my skin flaws and skin problems just by using that exfoliation treatment. And so I'll try to show that to you on the picture on my site. So if you want to go over there and watch this video, I'd really, really recommend it. Besides, if you watch this over there, there's not so many distractions, and it's got a very nice background. Now, one other reason that I think that you should get dressed for the home is if someone should come. Now, a lot of you think that you're supposed to be shut down, locked up, isolated, but it doesn't work that way. We're supposed to be isolated. I've had more company, more people at the door, more things coming to the door, and more people drive up and want to give me a message, give me something, or just tell me something. And I have had just finished having a ladies' Bible class here. We've met here for years and years and years, and so we saw no point in stopping. And so we have kept up everything as normal as we can. And so if someone should drop by, I think it's really important that you're presentable, because the first thing they will say in their ignorance is, you just don't look like you feel too well. Or they'll say, you look deranged. And so what you want to do is be sure that you are presentable. And that's not always going to happen, but for the most part, try to do that. The other thing I want to talk to you about various things is the housework. Now, one of the habits that I have had that was always seemed to be a roadblock to me getting the house the way I wanted it and making me feel good about it. Something was always making me tighten my jaw, or I just felt tense as soon as I got up in the morning. I couldn't seem to shake it. But when I stopped some of these habits, when I overcame some of these habits, and one of them was passing something by and getting so used to seeing something that I just pass it by and not thinking, I should really clean out that corner. I should really straighten that out. I should really do something about this, make it more presentable, or sort through some things. And as you grow older, one of the things you have to know is that you have to regularly shift everything, sort through things, because your needs change. For instance, I homeschooled my children, and we had wall-to-wall books. Well, things have changed now. We're not using them, but they have to be gone through and sorted and cleaned and dusted and kept nice if you want to keep them. Plus, also, you reassign them, to different people who want to take them with them. And things change. Things are not going to be exactly the same. You'll have different interests, you'll have different hobbies, you'll have different work that you do. And so you have to really watch it and don't pass it by. You get used to seeing something. I told you about the little dresser I have in the hall in the little knobs, the handles have come off, and they're inside of the drawer, and there's even a little battery-operated screwdriver to fix all that sitting on the dresser, and I've just passed it by. Oh, I don't have time for that. And so that was one thing that I had to overcome, and I appreciated and enjoyed my home, and my mind is not as cluttered, and I'm a lot happier, is to pick it up, don't pass it up, don't pass it by. And the other thing that I had to overcome was the fear of something, the fear of it. There's housekeeping down at the furthest reaches of a home that people neglect because they just don't want to go there. They just don't want to go in there. They don't want to dig something out. And you know, there's the utility room where you might keep your spare everything that regularly has to be gone and looked at so that things don't get too out of order. And the fear of it is something that you have to overcome. So if I have a list, one of the things I learned, if I have a list, it doesn't matter if it gets dark or cold. If that's on that list, I'm going to attempt it. I'm going to at least try to do it. If I'm too tired, that's another thing. But just to say I don't feel like it and I fear it. And of course, it's easy to fear. It's like you're afraid that you're going to get in too deep and it's going to be a big deal. But if you just attempt it, a few minutes of going through a cabinet or a drawer or a shelf, just a few minutes a day, and not passing it by for fear of it. And the other problem that I've had is the bad habit of viewing something as too trivial. I like to sew and I like to read. I could be making a garment for one of my grandchildren. I could be making something. I like to read, and I like to, there's many other things that I like to do. Those are big things, and I accomplish them, and you've got something to show for it. You've got a product to show for it in the end. But passing it up because it looks trivial. It does, doesn't it? It seems trivial to straighten something out when you could be making something and creating something. Even home interior decorating is more fun and fulfilling because it's an instant reward. You get instant success. And some of these things that I had viewed as so trivial eventually will need to be looked after, cleaned out, sorted through, and straightened out, and they will be a worse problem. So viewing things as too trivial to do it, fear of it, and passing it by, getting so used to it that you pass it by. So that is pretty much it for today's homemaking part. And the other thing is I want to view hospitality a little bit and what it does for you. Now I know a lot of you might not be extending hospitality, but there are different ways to do it. You know, I had an unboxing the other day, but I should show you a boxing or a bagging where I fill something up and I send it to someone so they can have a tea party. And you can also order from Talking Tables online. They have a line of dishes, paper plates and teacups that you can actually drink out of. They're paper. And it looks like fine porcelain. It's got a print on it that just looks like Royal Albert. And so you can, that's what I did, is I got a box ready for someone, and I included a little bit of type tea food that was already prepackaged and sent it on, and also had done some baking. You can send baked goods through the mail. You just have to indicate that it's perishable. And also there's a special way you can get online and find out. There's a lot of people have sites on how to package and send food through the mail, but you can also get prepackaged things. And so that's a way of extending hospitality. Now, back to the quote, real hospitality, where somebody's sitting across the table from you, or you have someone in your home. What it does is that it builds you up, and this is how it builds the other person up. People love to go somewhere to be invited, and especially in a home, because your home doesn't have quite so many restrictions as in the public these days. And I think that the home hospitality is going to be even more appreciated now after all this hulderall that's been going on and all these shenanigans. The home is going to be appreciated once again for hospitality is going to feel like freedom. It's going to feel comfortable. There's not going to be someone barking orders at you, and there aren't going to be a bunch of rules. But I will go into how to be a polite guest so that you get invited back. And one of the things about hospitality is that you get to show the best of you. You know, if you're living at home with yourself or your children or your mate, and they see the not so best of you half of the time, but hospitality is where they don't get to see what you put into it and all the work it was before you got dressed up and ready for them to come. They didn't get to see all the dirty dishes that you used to prepare the afternoon tea or whatever you were doing, because that's all been done. They see you at your best, and this is really important for positive reinforcement of yourself too, because they get to see something that's the best of you. You get to show your best, and that's what we used to do. We wanted to show our best. We didn't want people to see us at our worst. One of the dangers of having too much familiarity with people is they do see you in your casual moments or in your moments when you're not so organized and life isn't so pretty, and then they start to be critical. And we have noticed that in these days, that you make a friend and then they start getting more familiar with you and they want to get to know you, but then they think that now they have the privilege of criticizing you and pulling you down and being extremely rude. And so that is one danger. You have to protect yourself. So I want to go into dealing with people, because you are going to be dealing with people. We're not as isolated as people think with all this stuff. And so you need to learn to build other people up, and you can get people around you, maybe a guest that isn't so nice and thinks that because now you're best friends, or they've seen you quite a bit and become more familiar with you, they think now it's okay for them to tell you off, or now it's okay for them to have a blow up, or to have one of those, what is it called in communist countries, where you sit across the table and you make people confess and all kinds of things, have these little meetings. And so this is one thing you have to do, is you have to protect yourself and protect your family from that sort of thing, from people who are not exactly on board with you as far as keeping the home a pleasant place. I, for one, think that it is just anathema to be in someone's home and stage a fight or a blow up or create unpleasantness or start raising your voice at people. I've seen that happen. And you come into a perfectly nice family, and some people think that is unusual. They come into a perfectly nice home or a perfectly nice family where a woman just wants pleasantness and sweetness and light, and they think that she's living in a dream world, so they're going to burst her bubble and they're going to start criticizing or being harsh just so that she can't have a pleasant atmosphere. Have you ever had a hard time settling down after someone has created an unpleasant atmosphere for you in the home? Isn't it hard to sit in a nice place by a window and enjoy and smile because you're so happy at home? When someone has done that, they kind of leave something in the air. I don't know what it is, but there have been people who did not know that they were acting that way. Somehow that just was the way they were, and someone had to tell them, you can't do that. You cannot spoil the atmosphere for someone else. And I think that starts in babyhood and childhood, don't you? We used to take the children out of the room if they were fussy, so that the adults could visit and they were not disturbed. And the home has to be a place where you're happy. And if someone comes in and wants to make it unhappy, they're the ones that have to be talked to. And sometimes it's hard to identify it. Somebody maybe who and maybe someone within your home is just going around trying to be critical, trying to find fault with everyone, trying to make everybody confess something, and then everyone becomes uneasy. They don't want to be around them, and and they retreat to their own corners because this person is making the atmosphere very, very hostile. They leave a taint. I don't know quite what it is, but I've always felt like It's like they picked up dirt and just threw it around. So now I want to show you how you can protect yourself, how you can be careful to protect yourself and your family, and to protect yourself. Now I've talked about clothing as a protection, and that's how I approached modesty. A lot of people just don't understand that word modesty. So what I did is use it as protection. I say, okay, your clothing protects your skin, and from many different things. And so when I talk about protection, I want to talk about how to protect your family from what you would call too much interest, or someone who's fishing or digging for more. I call people fishermen and diggers, because they like to come and dig for more information, and they want to know something more that's personal, and they don't realize that your life is personal, and you have to remember was it the movie Emma, where one of the characters, Emma, was wanting to know what Frank Churchill was like, and I believe it was Jane that was kind of putting her off with these phrases that were very general. And Emma said, well, is he a man of information? Does he know this? Does he know that? Is he very this? And she said, oh, some people say he is. So you got to learn to answer generally and not let people dig too deep, because you'd be surprised what people can do with just a little bit of innocent information. So protect yourself by watch what you reveal. Just watch what you reveal. Watch your words. And so be modest with your words. And that means that you cover yourself. You don't uncover yourself. Don't uncover every little detail. People can be very rude, and they want to know what you believe about something, but if you have a sense that they're going to use that to argue with you, then you need to give it one of these placid sort of neutral answers, such as, well, some people think it's that way and some people don't. So be really careful what you reveal, and warn your children not to talk about their family or their personal problems to other people outside the home, because those people can often create so much trouble for you. Now, I've been a preacher's wife for almost 50 years, and I have seen it firsthand. You can be sitting there thinking, well, this person's, they're nice, and I'm a friend. They're just like me, and they want to know, how much time do you spend sewing? It seems very innocent, doesn't it? How much time do you spend sewing? Well, it's hard to say. It's hard to say. And are all your clothes homemade? Well, not really. It's hard to say. Just give it a neutral thing, because I have seen people take stuff like that and run with it. The way Emma said, Harriet, you take an idea and you run with it. And so I want to thank you all for coming today and for tuning in here, because I feel like I'm not worthy of it, but I don't want you to think that you are getting advice, and you are not really getting anything that is professional, because these are just my thoughts and my ideas, and this is just my blog. That's all it is, and that's what it was all about in the first place, wasn't it? It's kind of like a journal, and so I share with you some of the things. But I feel like Georgiana, when she was speaking of her brother to Elizabeth, she said, I don't deserve him. And I always feel like I really don't deserve it, that you came here, but I hope that it has been edifying for you. So I want to talk to you more about protecting yourself. Be careful what you reveal. Be careful of your words. Be modest in your information that you give to other people. If you want to protect yourself and protect your home, they can get it out of you. I don't know whether, through texting and through phone calls. You have to be really careful. It doesn't mean you need to be unkind to really good friends that you trust. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people that you have noticed. Now, I learned the hard way. I would just go ahead and say something, and then later on it would get back to me, and someone would complain about it, and I would think, wait a minute, I'm the one that gave the information to this person who spread it and who used it against me. For instance, I'll just make up a scene here, is that how much sewing do you do? And so I'm so nice, I'll take, oh, well, here's some things I have made. I'll show her a couple things I've made, or go show her my little stash of fabric. And then this person will, because they're not wise, will say she has more fabric than she needs, and she spends too much time sewing. She could be visiting the poor, or something like that. And maybe they're not even trying to be mean or malicious. They just say that, and then someone else takes it and runs with it, and they've developed an idea about you that you'll have a hard time living down. You'll have a hard time. One time years ago, when I first started out in this, someone said to my husband, "What is your wife like? You know, what does she like? What kind of person?" And he said something like, it was very, very innocent too. She's very creative, just very creative. She's a do-it-yourselfer. She likes to do things herself, and she likes to say things that are along the line of, you know, how to be more creative, that sort of thing. Well, this person got the idea that I was so talented that they couldn't approach me. So I would wonder why that person would never, you know, want to talk to me. And it turns out that just an innocent thing said to somebody would give them the wrong idea. You just don't know where people's minds are going to go. And some people will say, well, so what? You know, I don't need it. But if you're stuck in a social situation where you're going to have to be around that person, whether it's maybe in a business you're all in, you're going to have to really limit what you reveal. Be careful with your words. Be surface. Now, I used to despise, as a young person, I was just not interested. It used to bore me. Small talk. Small talk used to bore me. But I'm starting to see what it was for. Small talk prevented people from digging too deep into really meaty things where you might reveal your political views, and then it would start a strife. Small talk was things like, in fact, the collected verse of Edgar A. Guest, he had a poem about that, about this, talking about the small things of life. And I remember the farmers in Kansas. My husband's family was from Kansas, and so we would go out there, and at mealtime they would discuss the corn that they were, you know, we had buttered sweet corn, and they would discuss what it tasted like this year compared to last year and what kind it was. And we had bodacious. Here in Oregon, they have bodacious corn, and it's so sweet and so good. And they would talk about this, and that to me was small talk. Well, having read a lot of books and been to schools, I thought, my goodness, can't these people talk about anything else? And that's why I admired this movie, The Magic of Ordinary Days, because Livy was like that. She had come from, she was highly educated, and she did not understand the way the farmers sat around the table and talked about these things, and she eventually did come to an understanding of it. But it also prevents people from getting into talking about personal things that are critical. It keeps them from being critical. If you talk small talk, it's things about the weather. The weather was very interesting to people. They discussed it. And unfortunately, because of the media, weather doesn't seem to be our subject anymore, does it? And our subjects have been taken away from us. And so they would talk about things about the weather. Then we would talk about who was getting better, who had been sick, and who you had seen and been to see. But it was just general small talk, and it was, how are you? I am fine. And are you doing, are you doing more of this or more of that? But even when people ask me that, okay, what are you up to this week? What are you doing this week? I'm very careful now. I don't tell any small details, because you don't want to let people get too familiar. This is a phenomena of the current times we're living in. You meet people, you see them a few times, they become better friends with you, then they get really familiar and think that they can criticize you. And leave me a comment and see if that you think that that is true, if that has happened. Now, we were taught when we were growing up, even your brothers and sisters in the home and your father and mother, you don't pick quarrels with them, you don't criticize them, you don't start something, because it spoils it. It spoils the friendship. It spoils the atmosphere. And it sometimes comes from being too familiar. Now, I know people who, if I have not seen them in a long time, they're like old friends. They meet you, and it's all nice and pleasant and surface. But if they start coming around more, after a while, they'll find something to pick on. So I don't know where that is. Could be the homes they grow up in. Now, today I'd also like to talk to you about table manners. And then one more thing after that, and then I'm going to read from Edgar A. Guest. One of the things I wanted to tell you about table manners is this. We have a custom, and I think it's called family style, where there will be food or pieces of something in a bowl or a dish, and you pass the dish around and people help themselves. I think that's called family style. Now, in other countries, they serve your dish and bring it to the table, and that's what you get, which I believe is a great idea. I really actually prefer it. But I live in the USA, and that's the way they do it here, and my husband grew up that way, and so we had to learn when we were little, only take what you can eat, because if you take too much and your eyes are bigger than your stomach, then there would be a great waste, and so, or a great waste. And so one of the manners, if you are in a home where they are serving it in the serving dishes, or maybe buffet style where you're just having a tea and the tea things are on a platter or on a three-tiered serving dish, one of the things you have to be careful of is to be mindful that there are other people there. And I have been in tea parties where women who had not really been thinking, would just grab a handful of cookies or a handful of bread or a handful of stuff and leave nothing, very little for someone else. And one of the things that you can do if you're having a problem with that is to package the food or preserve it so that everything is distributed, and not put big platters of things out that people are going to go help themselves if you have a problem with that. We've seen this in potlucks, and some of the women have said that they would hold their dish back, or they'd bring two dishes and they'd hold one back and let the people that like to take a lot go through first, and then they would put a second dish out so that there would be enough for everyone. And that is one of the problems. To teach your children to be mindful of others. Look around and see who all's there, and don't take a handful of things. Just take one. And the other thing is these things that people talk about at the table is just awful. Be careful that you're not part of the problem, because if you ask them a question and it deals with someone's health, they will maybe surprise you and go into all kinds of sickening details that involve surgery procedures and things like that can make you ill while you're eating. And the rule when I was growing up is we don't talk about things like that we don't talk about unpleasant things when you're eating, first of all, because it really turn people's stomach. And we always said, would put people off their food. Well, in those days, everyone was extremely thin. And if you upset them emotionally and they didn't eat, they'd just be skin and bones, because the mealtime and the table was very important, and your digestion is really involved with your emotion, whether you understand that or not. We might go into that more later, but being very careful that you're not part of the problem. First of all, in giving people too much information, if they become critical, okay, what were they critical of, and did you contribute to that? Did you say something? That some people you have to be really careful with, because if you say anything to them, they grab a hold of it and they use it. And so if you're having a problem with that and you want more privacy, you need to be careful what you reveal about yourself and about your family. You need to just, behave as though everything is okay. Another thing too, if you get tired of people giving you advice and telling you what to do, don't say, I'm having a hard time with, that bookshelf, I'm trying to clean out all those books, because you're going to hear them say, well, what I do is this, and you should do this, and you should do that. Well, why don't you just get rid of them? you know, and so you're talking to people that don't have the same kind of wisdom you do because they don't live in your house. You have wisdom about your house. You have knowledge of your house. You have understanding of your possessions and your things and the way life works for you at your home. So, and they don't. So don't pose a problem to them because they'll start telling you, and you get awful tired of people's instructions constantly telling you what to do. You need to be quiet. And also, sometimes men, especially the husband, they look at things a little differently, and they think when you express a difficulty that you're having, that it means they must do something about it right now. That's the way they look at it. They're problem solvers, and they also want to get something done, and they'll say it. And you'll find them being trying to do something, and you'll think, wait a minute, I didn't mean for you to have to do this. I was just expressing myself. And sometimes they don't understand that. Now, remember in there was a movie called Our Mutual Friend, and Bella was talking to John Rokesmith, and she said she was trying to explain something, and she'd say, and I'm not setting up an opinion here, you know. And she was just trying to say, I'm not trying to tell you, you know, that something needs to be done here, or some, you know, to get all upset about it. I'm just discussing it. So sometimes we need to explain that. I wanted to discuss with you, we talked about captives before. Remember, in the last 2 videos, I've talked about how to live like a captive. And I didn't do everybody, but I thought later on that day, how many more captives there were that then we realized we don't want to see it, do we? We want to see God's hand in everything, and we often miss some of the things. We want to see the high points. We don't often notice some of the other things. And one of them was Samson, as you remember. But I thought we could use the quality of how he developed a quality while he was captive. Remember, he had lost his strength. But while he was captive with the Philistines, he had gotten his strength back. That was how come he was able to push the temple down, but with God's help, of course. But have you ever thought that while you're captive that you could gain strength? You could gain strength in many ways. You could do it mentally, spiritually, physically, and that's why I suggest do some exercises. Could get on. I use the Fabulous 50s. I don't listen so much. I like to turn the volume off and just follow along. Too much noise in the background bothers me, and sometimes these exercise people, they're wonderful, but they often have a philosophy that they want to say, and maybe there are some things that you object to, but I like her because she's dressed a little bit more, and she's better covered, and her exercises, I don't even believe a teenager could catch up to them. So if you're a teenager and you're not physically fit, go to Fabulous 50s and do some of their challenges. They have a 7-day challenge, a 14-day challenge. But just think, some of you who are, quote, in captivity will wish that you had used the time to get strong, to gain strength, to be healthier, to be smarter, to be more knowledgeable, to be more rested. And that's one of the advantages, too. You can be more well rested. I have been home and on the property since July the 4th, and I have noticed that my health has improved so much. I guess I hadn't realized that getting in the car twice a week and going and doing all these errands had the stress that it had been on me. I'm finding myself happier when I get up in the morning because I know I don't have to go anywhere. I order most things, and Mr. S always has his rounds to do, so I just give him a list, and he's enjoying getting out and walking around. So I have noticed that this has helped me. Captivity has helped me, and my rooms are more interesting. I'm getting them cleaned up. I'm getting them the way I want them. And if you'll notice, I did this one with all my white things. I've got Grandma's old chenille bedspread, and it was white, and I've got curtains that were handmade, and they're white, and I just wanted to try it. And of course, when you're just using sheets and pillowcases and blankets, you can change it all out. You're not committed to those colors. So now it's poetry time, and I also want, for those of you who are new here, I am homeschooling you. I homeschooled my children, and I didn't want to waste it all only on them. So I wanted to keep going. And homeschooling, all it is, this just takes the mystery out of it for you. I'm going to tell you things that I would tell my children in homeschooling. It mainly was years and years of discussing things, years and years of talking, of bouncing ideas back and forth, reading things, and learning how to pick what to learn, learning good judgment about reading material and good judgment about life. And so I'm going to take the mystery out of it for you. I'm sure you've heard of homeschoolers. So what in the world are they doing? They just trying to stay away from other people or what? So now I'm going to unlock the mystery, and I'm going to teach you. And so we've been doing poetry for a while, and appreciating poetry. I would probably encourage my children to learn about rhymes and stanzas and rhythm, and I forget what it's called, when each sentence has the same amount, a meter, when each sentence has the same amount of sounds in it. And I taught them about syllables, how to sound out syllables, and also how to write a poem, and how to make a rhyming poem, and how to make a poem like Hebrew poetry, which has, Hebrew poetry rhymes in thought. And if you look at the Psalms, you'll see it there. It has two look-alike thoughts, two thoughts put in a different way, and then a summarizing sentence. And so that's what we call prose, I suppose. So prose is thoughts, but they don't rhyme. And I mean, they don't rhyme, the words don't have the same sound. So I'm reading poetry today, and I'm showing you how to read it, because when there is a comma, you pause. And it's all neatly written out, as you can see, and it's all stacked up looking really nice, but it does not mean that you read it that way. If there is no comma, you continue on into the next line, the next sentence, without a pause. This is very important, because it changes the way that it sounds and means, changes the meaning of it and the understanding of it. So today I'm reading from Edgar A. Guest. I explained who he was last time. He was a British man who came to live in the U.S. after or during World War II, and he worked for a newspaper, and he knew that the American people would need success stories to lift them up and keep them thinking on the bright side of everything, because he knew the great potential that they had to make success in their lives and in their children's lives. And he knew what an opportunity it was to be in a country that had opportunities. But you can have a lot of opportunities in a land or a country or a home, but if your thinking is depressing and sour, you won't see it, and you won't be able to develop it. So first, you have to get the thoughts there. You have to tell people about success and how important it is. Now, one of the things that I told you about hospitality was that the success of it was that it made you show yourself your best side. You get to show people your best side, and you feel good for a while. You feel neutral about yourself for a while. You feel good. You don't see all your failures. When you're home and you're cleaning and you're doing all the things you need to do to make a house a home, you see the flaws in it. You see the failures, and even in yourself. But you have a little company, you have a little tea. I just had a tea today for 2 women, and just seeing the joy on their face made me feel really good. I had success. It is nice to have success, and it also helped me to show my best side to them and to me. And I know that sounds a little bit strange to some people, but we have to give ourselves permission to feel good about ourselves so that we can continue to be successful. Now, this is called The Real Successes, and it's by Edgar A. Guest. And he was known as the family poet of America. This is called The Real Successes. You think that the failures are many. You think the successes are few. But you judge by the rule of the penny, and not by the good that men do. You judge men by standards of treasure that merely obtain upon earth, when the brother you're snubbing may measure full length to God's standards of worth. The failures are not in the ditches. The failures are not in the ranks. They have missed the acquirement of riches. Their fortunes are not in the banks. Their virtues are never paraded, their worth is not always in view, but they're fighting their battles unaided and fighting them honestly too. There are failures today in high places, the failures aren't all in the low. There are rich men with scorn in their faces whose homes are but castles of woe. The homes that are happy are many, and numberless fathers are true. And this is the standard, if any, by which we must judge what men do. Wherever loved ones are awaiting the toiler to kiss and caress, though in Brad Street he hasn't a rating, he's still a splendid success. If the dear ones who gather about him and know what he's striving to do have never a reason to doubt him, is he less successful than you? You think that the failures are many. You judge by men's profits in gold. You judge by the rule of the penny. In this true success isn't told. This falsely man's story is telling, for wealth often brings on distress. But wherever love brightens a dwelling, there lives, rich or poor, a success. You know, one of the things that we were taught as children is not to envy anybody who seems to be doing very well, who seems to be doing better than you, because with every material acquirement, they've got more responsibility. They have more to look after. They have more that they have to protect and worry about. And you wouldn't want to, and more work too. So you wouldn't want to be envious of anyone because what you have is also very blessed and very successful. Now I'm going to read to you his poem called On Quitting. As you can see, it's gotten a little darker back here. How much grit do you think you've got? Can you quit a thing that you like a lot? You may talk of pluck, it's an easy word, and where'er you go it is often heard. But can you tell to a jot or guess just how much courage you now possess? You may stand to trouble and keep your grin, but have you tackled self-discipline? Have you ever issued commands to you to quit the things that you like to do, and then, when tempted and sorely swayed, those rigid orders have you obeyed? Don't boast of your grit till you've tried it out, nor prate to men of your courage stout. For it's easy enough to retain a grin in the face of a fight there's a chance to win, but the sort of grit that is good to own is the stuff you need when you're all alone. How much grit do you think you've got? Can you turn from joys that you like a lot? Have you ever tested yourself to know how far with yourself your will can go? If you want to know if you have grit, just pick out a joy that you like and quit. It's bully sport and it's open fight. It will help keep you busy both day and night. For the toughest kind of a game you'll find is to make your body obey your mind. And you will never know what it is meant by grit unless there's something you've tried to quit. Now, earlier in the poem, it talked about self-discipline, and I talked to you about that in a previous video, that one of the best ways to gain self-discipline is to do something that you don't want to do. Write it on a list and make yourself do something that doesn't seem like you're in the mood for it or interesting and not very inspiring, but needs to be done. Just go ahead and do it. And it's mind over matter. He mentioned it here in this poem. The toughest kind of a game you'll find is to make your body obey your mind. So try to do something that, or not do something that you're trying to quit, and just see if you can, just one time. And that's how I got into exercising. I always hated exercising, but I think a lot of it was the way that it was taught was not very inspiring or effective at all. And now that I've discovered a kind of exercising that is more physical therapy, here's what the instructor said, and a lot of us need to know this because I have given homemaking challenges, and I say, today I'm going to have a homemaking challenge. Maybe you'd like to join me. Get all of your dishes done. Get your floor swept. Get the clutter picked up. Clean up at least the front room, the first room somebody sees. And somebody will write and say, I can't do all that. That's just too much for me. Well, this lady, she has the same questions because she has an exercise program. And she had a whole video. She had to have a whole video to show you how to do exercises when you couldn't keep up with her. She would say, when I do this and this and this, you just do this and this once. And so just do something. Try one thing and do it. And some people will not do anything because they can't do it all. Try to do something. I wouldn't have gotten this far with exercising if I had not just tried at least one or two. And I would do about 2 exercises for every 10 movements that she had. And now I can just about keep up with her. But I would not have. It's the same with learning a skill. If you want to do something, you don't just start out with the skill. And a lot of people don't understand that. They'll say, I don't know how to do that, and just give up. But that's part of being self-disciplined, doing something you don't want to do, doing the first steps, which might not be as fulfilling as having the accomplished thing. So ladies, I hope that this has been a blessing to you, and that you are able to get something done while listening to this. And if you'd like to, if this isn't enough, you can go over to my playlist on the left-hand side of the site and click that on and get the previous ones going. Also, if you would like to leave a comment but don't feel confident doing it on the blog, you can go to my email and email me your comment and let me know that that's your comment, you want it on there. And the other thing is, for those of you who want to buy my book, Just Breathing the Air, you click on donate, and the cost of the book is $38 now because of some of the taxes in various states. And you would donate that amount, but in the message part, leave your name and address and say this is for the book. Now that is a book that I recommend because I'm homeschooling you, and it's privately published, so it's not available anywhere but through me. And also, thank you very much, those of you who have sent your kind and sacrificial donations. They help more than you know. They help so tremendously, and they keep me motivated to keep going here. And so, ladies, God bless you, and I hope you have a wonderful day. See you next time.